I'm Zaccura and welcome back to my channel. In today's video, I'm going to be showing you guys my entire process of how I make my Inktober drawings. So if you don't know what I'm talking about, then I recommend you go watch that video. I'll have the little eye thing and I'll also be in the description box because I am doing something pretty cool this year for Inktober. And if you want to see all of the drawings I've done thus far, be sure to check out any of my social media links, except for Facebook, because I hardly ever use Facebook, but any of my other social media links, you can go and see all of my Inktober drawings I've done so far. So today I'm going to be taking you through the entire process of the tools I use, some techniques that I use, all the way through until it's already finished for uploading. So from initial sketch all the way to the slight light tweaking that I do in the photo, the finished photo, before uploading it online. So first is the tools. I'm going to be starting here with the paper. If you're curious about what paper it is this Canson XL watercolor paper. It's 9 by 12, as you can see, and it's cold press, nothing fancy, 140 pound. But the reason why I like this one, I only just started using this one during this year of Inktober, and I like it. It's one of the smoothest cold press watercolor papers I've seen, and if you turn it over to the other side, it's even smoother. And I know that most watercolor papers that are cold press tend to be smoother on one side, and I'm not sure if you're supposed to use the smooth side, but I do, so it works fine for me. So yeah, so if you're curious about why I have this line around the paper, it's a trim line because I want all of my Inktober drawings to be the same size. So this is I made it just standard computer paper size, 8.5 by 11 inches. That way they're all the same size because the first drawing was 8.5 by 11 inches, so I decided to make all of them that same size. And also that way they fit into standard document frames. So the tools that I use are a pencil, micron liners, then I use Quill pens, or Quill pen really. I do all of my Quill pen inking with just this same Quill pen. I don't know exactly which nib it is because I've been using it for a long time, but it's the one that's very, very bouncy, meaning it can variate, the line can variate a lot from really thin to really thick, and I just really like that. It just feels really smooth. Then of course I use the India ink. This is the main shebang right here for all of my Inktober drawings. I do the lines with it, and then I also do the ink wash with it. If you're curious about exactly what ink this is, as you can see, it is Speedball Super Black India ink. It comes in a little box like this. Then for the ink wash, I use a brush, and if you're curious about what brush this is, a Craft Smart number 4. Yeah, this is the kind of brush that you get in those kid packs for like you get 100 different brushes. Then I have masking tape. This is very important. Next is Copic markers. I have the white Jelly Roll pen. This is for any mess ups, to cover up any, if you accidentally put the ink wash, because sometimes the ink wash bleeds into places you don't want it to bleed into, and then this saves your life. And also you can use it for highlighting and stuff, so it's a really handy tool to have when you're working with ink. Then as for other tools, I have paper towel. This one's totally inky already. Then of course I have my cup of water, and this is pretty much the same idea as when you're doing watercolor. However, since I'm only using ink, which is all the same color, I only have 1 cup of water. When you're doing watercolor, you generally want to have 2 cups of water, one for cleaning your brushes and one that you leave clean for wet on wet techniques. But since this is all gray and this is all just India ink, I get lazy and I just use one and it works. Then I have this, which is just a piece of watercolor paper that I keep nearby, and this is for testing because throughout the entire illustration I am mixing water with India ink a lot because I run out and I have to make new ones, and sometimes it becomes too dark or too light, and so that I don't just accidentally, you know, put that like black spot on my finished illustration, I have this nearby to test to see what it looks like, and I can always keep that nearby next to my paper towel. And so that is all the tools that I use, and now I'm going to go into the process of making my Inktober drawings. So first, before I even put pencil to this paper, I first do thumbnails. So this is a technique used by many artists, and that is you do small thumbnails of the drawing that you want, just to throw ideas out there, nothing finished, nothing fancy, so that you kind of have an idea of the whole composition of the drawing before you actually dive into your you know, your inks and stuff to actually make the finished illustration. I don't normally actually use thumbnails that much, but since Inktober I am doing a story, I want all of my drawings to have a very clear message, have a very clear idea in them, that I do the thumbnails. So like here you can see this was day 1, this is day 2, you know, here's day 3, day 4, so on. So today's drawing is going to be day 11, which you can see right here. See, nothing fancy, but it's just going to be her sitting on her porch, leaning against the post with the balloon and the door behind her. So I know that this is the overall idea that I want in my drawing, and then I go ahead onto my real paper and I sketch out the finished drawing. And so I'm going to be doing that all in time lapse, and I'll get back to you after the sketch is finished. Alright, so I'm done with the sketch, I think. I think that's got everything that I need just for the sketch. So now I'm going to take my micron first. I'm going to be using 05, and I'm going to be using that with a ruler. This is just an everyday school ruler. And the reason why I'm using these two tools first is because there's a lot of straight lines, as you can see on the porch, that need to be done with a ruler, and I don't want to use a quill pen with a ruler because I don't think that would work very well. And a quick tip, if you are going to be using a fine liner with a non-artist grade ruler, which this is not an artist grade ruler, this is like the 50-cent type rulers, you may have run into a problem, and that is you put the line and then when you remove the ruler it smudges the line. And so if you notice on these rulers, the ruler is not completely flat. It's flat completely on one side, and then on the other side it's kind of round slightly, and so that actually lifts the edge of the ruler off of the page slightly. So if you're going to be using one of these school rulers for your micron, just put it simply not the flat side, so this would be the flat side down, and the whole thing is completely touching the paper. Flip it over to the side and you can see it's kind of, you know, it's kind of round. That way when you use the pen to outline, the nib of the pen won't actually touch the edge of the ruler, and thus there will be nothing for the ruler to smudge. So there you go, that's just a quick tip. And now I'm going to do all of the micron lining in time lapse, and I'll get back to you when it's time to use the quill pens. Okay, so now that I have all of the straight lines ready, it's time for me to use the quill pen. Ta-da! So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my bottle of ink and open it, and it's always really stuck I seriously need to like clean the bottle more often. But anyway, so now that I have my open bottle of ink, I'm going to be setting it aside. I always set it on top of the paper towel in case I drip. But as you can see, I missed before. And it hit the table, so I'll have to clean that once Inktober is finished. Maybe I'll make a video on how to clean things that have India ink stained on them, because India ink is very permanent, but I did find a way to clean it. So you can let me know if you want a video on that. Maybe I'll make one. Anyway, so now I'm going to just take the quill pen and I'm going to dip it in the ink and start inking. Now, so some tips for how to ink with a quill pen. One is practice. It takes a while to get used to using quill pens. I watched videos on how to use them before, but it was still hard to get the hang of. You need to practice on them in order to really get them suited to your hand. But tips on how to do it is keep in mind that it's less of a pen and more of a brush. And that means you're going to be holding it like more at an angle, less, I don't want to tilt the pen down because I might drip ink on my drawing, but not down as you would with a pen, but more like that, more tilted. And this will help get the ink flow out properly, and so it won't get stuck and clogged. But I find that even if you do that, sometimes it does get clogged, and that's okay. That's just because the ink tends to dry on the pen. As you can see right here, actually, I already let it dry a little bit, so it's not coming out anymore. So, but there's still plenty of ink on this pen. So that's why the paper towel, it has so much of this ink here, is because when this happens, all you need to do is just tap it until some of the ink comes out, and that will start the get the ink flowing once more. But as you'll find that as the pens get older and more covered in ink, it will happen more and more often, and once that happens, you have to clean your quill pens. So now I think that's all I can talk about really for now, and since I'm really terrible at inking while talking, I am going to do the inking in time-lapse, and then I will get back to you for the next step. I have to turn on my lamp because it is getting dark. Welcome to October. Okay, so I've done all of the roundy lines so far. As you can see, I also started putting in some details for the wood here, but I'm going to leave most of that to the next step, which is going to be hatching and cross-hatching. But for now, I just did all of the basic lines that weren't straight. One other tip that I forgot to mention before, but you probably saw it already, and that is to work towards whatever hand you are. So I'm right-handed, and that means I'm going to be working on the page from left to right. If you're left-handed, work from the page from right to left. And this, of course, only applies when you're doing the quill pen stuff, because unlike the microns or other fine liners, which are alcohol-based, India ink is water-based, and that means it takes some time to dry. And since when you draw, people tend to rest their hand on the paper. If I was starting the inking job from here, I'd just smudge everything and I'd get ink all over my hand. So you're going to want to make sure that you're organizing and steadily drawing towards a way so that you're not leaning on the wet ink. That's something to keep in mind while you're inking. So now I'm going to let this dry because India ink needs a little bit of time to cure and dry. So I'm going to leave it alone for maybe 15-20 minutes. I find that you can leave it longer, overnight, however long you want, but I think 15-20 minutes really is the minimum before erasing. I'm going to be erasing all the pencil sketch underneath before moving on to the hatching and cross-hatching, so I'll see you in a bit. I'm back, and some time has passed, and now it's time to take my Kirby eraser, because why not, and erase all the pencil sketch before moving on to the next step, which is hatching, cross-hatching, and adding details and so on. Now I'm going to be moving on to hatching and cross-hatching, as well as the details like the grain on the wood and so forth. But for those who don't know what hatching or cross-hatching is, I'm going to be showing a little bit here to explain. So hatching is the process of using lines to create the illusion of shading, because in the ink is the ink is completely black. So how would you add shading with something that's completely black, because shadows aren't completely black? So by putting straight lines closer or tighter together, you can get a look that is darker or lighter. So here, if I put them really, really close, you get a much darker look than here. So that's an example of hatching. And then cross-hatching is simply doing hatching that crosses over. So you would do straight lines this way, and then you would do straight lines this way. And that is an example of what cross-hatching looks like. Now, hatching can really actually be any form of this concept of using lines in various distances from each other, and that can include doing a free-form hatching, which is like lines that go like all over the place and so on. That is a valid form of hatching as well. That right there. So now that is what I'm going to be doing here for this drawing. Because before I add the ink wash, which is the majority of really the overall atmosphere and shading of the entire drawing that really gives the drawing life and depth, I like to add some hatching and cross-hatching, because that adds just an extra level of detail and crispness to the drawing. So that's what I'm going to be doing now, and see you after time lapse is over. Apologies for not capturing the most of the cross-hatching and hatching job. My camera ran out of battery and shut off on me, even though I thought I was charging it. This thing is weird sometimes. And normally I would have just stopped drawing and waited for the camera to recharge. But you know, I am kind of working on a deadline here. This is still an Inktober drawing, and I need to get it done by the end of the day, and I already started it kind of late in the day, so I just needed to get it done. But I already explained what I did, and you can see the finished result here. So now I'm going to set it aside and really wait for like a good half hour at least before going in with the ink wash, because it needs to dry and set so that it doesn't smudge when I put water on top of it. So I'll see you then. Let my camera charge some more, and hopefully it will be good by the time I come back to do the ink wash. Alright, so now that this is nicely cured and dry, no smudging, no wetness at all, it's time to move on to the ink wash, and that's going to involve the brush, the cup of water, which I have over there, and the bottle of ink. So this is the way I do it, and this is just something that I completely kind of figured out on my own, the way I do it. But what I do is I take the cap of the ink bottle, and I use this as my pan, I guess, like when you, what do you call it? Yeah, I think they're mixing pans or whatever for watercolor, but anyway, I just use the cap of the bottle for this. So I set that over here, and then what I do is I take my brush and I take drips of water and I put it into the cap. Oh, actually, I just remembered the first step is always to tape down this. So I'm going to do that right now. Okay, so now that I have it taped down, I can continue. I have some water in this cap, which the camera can't really see very well, but there's some water in there. And maybe put a little bit more. Okay, then I'm just going to really gently, just barely touch the ink in the well and immediately mix that into the water. Sometimes you really need like a super tiny amount of ink, and sometimes I don't even dip it directly into the ink. I'll just take some off of the like rim of the ink bottle. Then I take my sample piece of paper here, and usually I keep this off screen, and I test to see how dark it is. And I think that's pretty good, so we'll just go with that. And this is kind of what I use as my paint, and I will just start wherever I feel like it needs shading. I will just go ahead and put the ink there, and this is pretty much just the process that I do for the entire piece, and I just kind of keep layering it on. Like right here, it's not very dark, and later on I'll probably put more layers to make it darker in this spot. This is pretty much how I do it. It's just wet on dry technique, which is just wet paint directly onto dry paper. The only time I ever really use wet on wet techniques is when I'm doing the backgrounds that aren't lined, which I'll have a pop-up in the video showing right here, and I'll show you that some of the backgrounds that I do that has just little silhouettes of trees or bushes that aren't sketched out or planned, then I will do those wet on wet. But in this specific illustration, I don't think there's going to be much wet on wet. Perhaps on the walls, these walls, there will be some wet on wet, and you'll see me doing that. But now all that it means is that I will be taking some water and putting it on there first, then taking my paint here from the cap. I never go directly to the bottle because it's too dark, so I always would just take this and then I'll put it on and smooth it out to get a nice even gray tone. So yeah, I think that's pretty much it. So I'll kick it into time lapse, and I'll see you in a bit. Okay, so the piece is pretty much finished right now, and I'm going to let it dry, and then I'm going to take the final photo, and I'm going to be talking about how I do that, and then I'm going to upload it into my computer and show you guys how I get it ready for uploading, from slightly editing the color levels to adding the watermark. Right now the paper is pretty warped, but as I just let it dry with this tape on, it will flatten itself back out again. Okay, so now I have the camera off of the tripod, excuse me, and I'm going to be taking the photo. So normally I would take this photo during the daylight, but today happened to be a special occasion, and that is it's not daytime anymore, and I still need to take the photo. So, but anyway, usually when I take the photo, I keep this my desk lamp on, because the desk lamp is slightly yellow, and some of you guys have mentioned that you like how the photos look, like the finished pieces look like they have like this slight color in them, like a gradient of yellow or magenta in them, even though India ink is completely gray. It's completely black and white, and even under this camera right now it doesn't look completely gray because the light is slightly yellow. But anyway, to give some more atmosphere to the pictures, I had to have a special routine, I guess, on how I take these photos. And I don't normally do too much photo manipulation in my artwork, because if I do, it's usually just to tweak it so that it looks like how it looks when I see it with my own eyes, because the camera always tends to wash everything out and it doesn't pick up the colors properly. But other than that, I usually try not to manipulate the colors too much. But in this case, because I'm working with India ink, which is completely black and white, and I'm also making a story, I want the story to have a specific kind of storybook, kind of magical feel to it, and that's why I do tweak the colors ever so slightly, and I will show you guys how I do that. A lot of it has to do with how I take the photo. So I have the lamp on here, And if you turn it off and look at my... Oh, that looks dark. It's not this dark in real life, guys. But yeah, so you see different lights give a different effect. Like this kind of looks more purplish. And so I may do it like this, but it's a little too dark. So I'll keep the lamp on. And I'm going to turn the lamp slightly towards me so that there isn't this like focal point, because as you can see it's like really bright over here and not so much over here. And that actually helps with the gradient, by the way. When it's brighter here, darker here, it creates this gradient in the drawing. But I don't want it to be too much, so I'm going to be turning the lamp slightly. Then I'm just going to go ahead and take the photo, and obviously though I'm going to have to turn off the camera in order to take the photo. So yeah, that's pretty much it. Then I'll put the photo into my computer and pull up the program, and I'll get back to you when that's done. Alright, so I've pulled up the image into Clip Studio Paint, and don't worry if you don't have Clip Studio Paint, don't worry, because the things that I'm going to be doing are very, very common tools that you will find in many various different programs. Usually the OS for your operating system for your computer will have some sort of editing program. I know Windows 10 does have their own photo editing system thing, and that's really all we're going to be using is just the tonal correction. So anything that has where you can adjust the brightness, the hue and saturation, so forth. A lot of cell phones, smartphones tend to have these built in already, so you can do that there. If you have Macintosh, I'm pretty sure Macintosh also has, when you pull up a photo, just like you look up in the edit menu, like these buttons over here, like on Macintosh. I don't have a Mac, so I can't really speak for certain, but I'm pretty sure I've used it before, and I think that there is, if you go to edit, you'll find all different kinds of tonal correction stuff. But yeah, any kind of photo editing software will have this ability. But I'm just bringing it up in Clip Studio because I'm familiar with it, and I just like it. So yeah, so first I'm going to be adjusting the brightness and contrast because the picture is quite dim, partly because of the light that I was using and partly because of the camera. So I'm going to adjust the brightness, making it brighter, and also adjusting the contrast till I get it to the point where it looks the way it looks to my own eye in real life. So yeah, I think that's about right. And you can see there's a huge difference. This is usually as far as I go in regards to editing my photos, because the lamp that I shoot under usually isn't right. Even daylight sometimes can wash out the photos. So to just get it nice and crisp, that's there's the magic right there. It's really in the brightness and contrast. So now we're going to do the tonal correction. I'm going to go to color balance, and this is great because it can go really into the specifics of how much yellow or blue or green or magenta, cyan or red, or is it cyan? I think it's cyan, maybe, I don't know. There's also like settings that you can go to. Oftentimes these are called like filters or presets. Like if you go to hue and saturation, like you can adjust the hues and it kind of automatically adjusts everything in whatever way that it decides. And that's good for if you're not too picky, but I'm picky, so I'm gonna go to the color balance and do it manually. So usually I go and make it slightly yellow and then slightly magenta. So in a way I'm kind of like making my own filter, if you will, and I do this. You could be like, oh, why don't you just make a filter and always use the same one? Well, I tried that before and it doesn't work. Like I'll make a filter where I'll be like, alright, I'm always going to use this filter every time I put in a colored photo, and I'll always use this filter whenever I do a black and white photo, and it always looks different on every single picture. So I find just doing it manually every single time can really give me the look that I want every single time. So yeah, I'm just adjusting levels whatever fits my fancy, and just making it look nice. And you can see there's quite a big difference. It almost fools your eyes into thinking that the original looks slightly green because of how different it is. But as you can see, when you add just this slight red in there's just something about it that makes it look really like dreamy and fantasy-like and stuff, which is kind of the look that I'm going for. in this story that I'm making. And so there, I think I'm quite happy now with how the levels look. It's slightly purplish, it's slightly yellow. Then after I've saved it without the watermark, I add the watermark. And so what I do is I just take the text tool. Again, if you don't have Clip Studio Paint, any text tool will work. You can even do this separately, like make a separate file that has just your watermark and always use that same thing in your drawings, but I tend to do it again every single time. And the reason is because as much as I am all for protecting one's work and making sure that it's not so easy to get stolen or claimed as someone else's, I also like to let people enjoy my work. Like it can be really distracting when the watermark is like huge. Like some people, like they'll take their watermark and put it like this, and like put it right in the middle of the screen, and it's super obvious, and I think that just really distracts from the photo, and it's just so ugly. So I kind of I take the time to really, you know, put it in a way that is there, so that if people would, you know, God forbid, would want to actually steal it and use it, they wouldn't really be able to do that because my name would be right there on it. But at the same time, it's not so obtrusive that it distracts from the overall feeling that you get from looking at the piece. So I usually put it down either in white or in black or whatever, and then I just transfer it to its own layer so that I can manipulate it. Then I will just select it and move it around to wherever I feel like it. And I think here, right above the stairs, right under the porch, is a good place. So I'm going to make it a little bit smaller. Then I am going to lower the opacity until it's just barely visible and just barely legible. And that's usually the tricky part because it tends to disappear pretty quickly, and I still want it to be able to be legible while not distracting from people who look at it. Because if it's like completely white like this, your eyes just immediately, boom, Zaccura.deviantart.com. You know what I mean? So I want it to be not that obvious. And if you're curious why I choose DeviantArt, it's because I treat DeviantArt kind of like my portfolio. I put all of my major art pieces there, and I've been kind of doing the same thing with Newgrounds, but Newgrounds is newer for me. Like I've only been uploading it since this year, really. Only a couple months ago I've started uploading, but DeviantArt really has like all of my major art pieces from way back in 2015, and which is not really way back, it's only like a couple years, but it's way back for me. So yeah, that's why I always put DeviantArt, because it will always be on DeviantArt, you know, so, yeah. And I think that's good. And then I'm just going to save this as Inktober Day 11 Tonal Correction Sub. And then I have a separate folder. All of my uploads right here. Da-da-da! You can see these are all of my Inktober drawings so far. And here's number 11! Hooray! So I think that brings me to the end of this video. I really hope that everything was easily understood. Again, I'm so sorry about what happened earlier with the lost footage for the cross-hatching. Part of it, I actually just looked at it, and apparently all of it is gone, because not only did my camera run out of battery, it also corrupted one of the video files that I actually had, that actually had me doing some of the cross-hatching, and that file is completely corrupted and I can't use it. So yeah, sorry about that. Maybe in the future I'll make a new video that shows just about cross-hatching, maybe like a tutorial on cross-hatching techniques. I don't know, would you guys like a full video on that? You know, let me know if you'd like that, because I think it'd be a good redemption, you know. But yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, if you found it useful, if you just found it entertaining anyway, please don't forget to give it a thumbs up and subscribe so you don't miss out on upcoming videos. All the links to my social media pages are in the description box, where you can follow me for daily updates, including the Inktober drawings for this year right now. I am uploading daily so far onto my social media, so you guys can definitely go check that out. And if this is the first time you're hearing of my Inktober store, I definitely recommend you go and watch that video. The link to that video will be in the description box, or has all the info about this Inktober project story thing that I'm working on. And if you want to catch up on all of the Inktober drawings that I've done so far, you can go check out any of my social media sites except for Facebook, because boo Facebook. I don't know, I just don't really like Facebook that much. But yeah, Twitter, Instagram, DeviantArt, Newgrounds, they have all of my Inktober drawings thus far. And yeah, I think that's pretty much it. So yeah, until next time, stay awesome, stay inspired, always. See ya!